All right, here's your this will be better than coffee. So tell us how excited you are now to play this game finally and have us stop asking you these really original questions about playing your dad.
I am very excited about the game because there's a lot of things. One phenomenal opportunity. We took advantage of obviously a really good one with UCLA. We've got one here just from a quality win perspective. That's great. I'm also fired up. I mean, I heard we've got almost 500 fans flying in New York City, just hearing all these people that are coming from Albuquerque, first time going to the Garden. My players, only one player has played in the Garden. Grateful that my dad was willing to do this. As for playing my dad, like it doesn't even feel like a factor, honestly. I mean, this is fourth time we've done it. There's no extra motivation, extra anything. I mean, I'm excited to see him, excited to see my mom. But other than that, I mean, it's more in New York, the Garden, more so than playing my dad that excites me.
All right, next up, we'll go to Zach from the New York Post.
Hey, what's up, Richard? How are you?
What's up, Zach?
Not much, man. Uh, Jump right in. Um, I'd love to hear what your thoughts were last year when Rick said you were going to be the next coach. You were going to be his replacement at St. John's one day.
I thought, oh, there's my dad saying another insane thing. And, hopefully nobody's listening to him. Yeah, I don't know. I think he was probably messing around. I don't know where that came from. Like that's never ever been like a conversation we have had. So I don't really know where it came from. So my first thought was, why would he say that? And then second was probably, oh, he's probably just joking around.
Richard, you obviously guys have done this before, but what is it like when you're out there and you see your dad on the other sideline?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a little weird. I thought every game has been a little bit different. Like when we played at FIU, I mean, honestly, that was a bye game, and I'm sitting there going like, all right, we need to fund the program. So grateful that he was able to do that. The Minnesota one, they were so far ahead of us in the growth of their program. I think they won the national title. I'm not positive, but when we played them that year. Iona coming here was really cool because that was the first big crowd, and I know he had a lot to do with that. And then this one, it'll be no different. I mean, it's not like it's an NCAA tournament game. I mean, we have so many games left to where, sure, it's a great opportunity for both programs, but I don't really look down there much, and I know I'll be a better coach after playing them and coaching against them. So other than that, it's not as weird as people think.
All right, next question. Person didn't have a name on it, but whoever's on as Zoom user, you're up.
I don't think I do it. I'll try it. It's me, Steve.
Okay.
Uh, hey, Coach, you were still in diapers when your dad was an assistant coach of the Knicks, and then when he came back as a head coach, you're in your formative years, like kindergarten, preschool age. I'm curious, what are your memories of running around the Garden, or did you have a chance to? Did your dad give you a free for all to run around the arena when you were just a kid?
Zero memories. Zero. I mean, I was really young. My memories growing up basketball wise were Kentucky, not as much New York. Now, I mean, the memories that I have of the Garden are as an assistant coach, we win the Big East. I'm working for him at Louisville. That was an amazing moment. But like, I don't remember a whole lot of, I think he was the head coach of the Knicks in 88. So I was 4 years or 6 years old. So I don't remember much of that. But definitely great memories, whether it was an assistant coach winning the Big East, beating Syracuse, winning the NIT my first year at Minnesota in the Garden. So lucky to have some good memories.
All right, next up, Adam Zagoria.
Richard, how we doing, buddy?
Zags, what's up, bud?
How we doing, buddy?
Great.
obviously a lot of coaches, big name coaches have kind of gotten out of this sport recently, Tony Bennett, Jay Wright, etc. What do you think kind of drives your dad to keep going? And how long do you think he, can coach until? Another 5 years?
Yeah, I have no idea how long he's going to coach. What I will say is he's 72 years old, and I think the way that he lives his life and the way that he coaches, it's inspiring. I think like most professions, you have a lot of complainers out there. And for a 72-year-old man, he's never complaining. I think he knows that coaching keeps him young, keeps him busy. And I think that he wants to do that as long as, he's healthy, and he is healthy. So I know he's really enjoying it, and I don't see him slowing down anytime soon.
How much do you think being in a league with Danny and, some of these other top coaches, and obviously a program that's won 2 straight national championships, motivates him to want to get back to the top or near the top?
I don't know if Danny Hurley motivates him or any other of the coaches motivate him. He's always been amazingly self-motivated. I think that he's a New Yorker. He's got a lot of pride in the city. He's got a lot of pride in Madison Square Garden. So I think that motivates him way more than any other coaches. I think that he wants to get St. John's, it's obviously it's a huge city, but he wants to get those people talking about, the Johnnies. And I think that drives him more than anything. Like when we played this game, he wanted to, let's see if we can really fill up Madison Square Garden. And I'm like, Dad, it's a Sunday football, all those things. And he's like, yeah. Oh no, I'm going to work my butt off to get it done. So like, I think that stuff really drives him. I don't think other people ever motivate him.
Thanks. See you Sunday.
Yep.
Right. Next up, Kevin Connolly.
Richard, I have 2. Just if you have watched St. John's during this season, are you watching as a coach who's going to play them? Are you watching as a son who's watching your dad team play, and kind of your thoughts on how they've played through these first 3 games?
It's a good question. I think probably Rutgers, I was watching as a son. I think that they had Quinnipiac and who was their first game? Fordham. And then as it got closer, I'd say the last game, I was watching it more as a coach to evaluate. But I know the way that like my dad always coaches early in the season. He's not, not to say that he didn't respect Fordham, Quinnipiac, and Wagner, but he always kind of saves some things that he'll do for that first big non-conference game on his schedule. So I always know, like, and I do it too. I think majority of coaches do it. There's going to be some surprises maybe that you haven't seen. But I mean, for the most part, when you play my dad's teams, like it comes down to physically competing for 40 minutes. It really is not about a play, a scheme, or anything like that. Like you better bring your hard hat or else you're going to get exposed. And he's been doing that obviously for 40 years.
And when he's talked after these first couple of games, he's always brought up your team and saying that effort wouldn't be good enough to beat a New Mexico, and listing your players and how you played, especially after you beat UCLA. Just kind of your thoughts on that, and him just continuing to elevate and talk about your program.
Yeah, I remember when I went to the Yankee game with him, and I landed at LaGuardia, and I hadn't talked to him because I had a game before and I was busy or whatever. And so I just skipped my mind. I landed in LaGuardia, and I'm like, where am I going? Am I going to your home? Am I going to meet you in the Bronx? What am I doing? He said, oh, come to St. John's. And so I'm like, all right. So I walk in there and they're practicing, and I could tell all the players are looking at me like, we don't like this guy because all he does is hype up your team like you're the Boston Celtics. So that's what he does. He's always done it. He always picks an early game that he feels will motivate the team. I mean, and I certainly did it for UCLA and St. John's as well. So he does it times 50 for sure. So I'm sure the players and the coaching staff are sick and tired of hearing about New Mexico.
Next up's Peter from the New York Daily News.
Hi, Richard. I guess just what was it like growing up as Rick Pitino's son? And at what point did you kind of, I guess, realize you wanted to go into this line of work as well?
Yeah, it was a lot because really he's the head coach at Kentucky at the time. He's killing it. They're winning big. That's fanfare to the highest extreme. And I never really liked it. Now, that was fortunately pre-camera phones, social media, but it was still really extreme. And I remember so often we would go out to eat a lot. My family likes to go out to eat a lot, and there would be a line of Kentucky fans waiting for pictures, autographs, all those things. So, like, I mean, I appreciated it, but it was never really for me. That I think he enjoys it a lot more than I do. Um, Him going to Boston probably shaped my personality a little bit more because they don't care in Boston. Like, there's no, you either win or you lose, and they're gonna love you if you win, and they're gonna kill you if you lose. Um, so I think I shaped kind of my mentality of this whole thing there more so than Kentucky, because Kentucky's just this extreme of fanaticism. I wanted to get into coaching at some capacity. It wasn't positive what I really wanted to do. And I was fortunate to meet Mike Hart, who's a legendary high school coach up in Barrington, Rhode Island. And he had heard that I was going to Providence College, and I was working a basketball camp with him, more just to do something over the summer. And he said, "Hey, why don't you come be my assistant coach while you're at college?" And that's where I really got the bug and just kind of hit the ground running from there.
Cool. That makes sense. And then just how much of a resource does your dad remain for you? Obviously, I'm sure he was quite a bit starting out.
Yeah. I mean, more as just being a father. I'm not going to call him about an out of bounds play. He doesn't know my team. Now, he'll probably know this team a lot more, but with all due respect to anybody, like, if you're not around our guys every day, like, I'm probably not going to listen to you. Just, and the same for other programs. Like, I won't interject unless I'm really involved and know what the culture is and so on. So, more of a resource in just, he is a grandparent to my kids. Like, it's more of that stuff than it is the basketball part of it. I mean, humbly speaking, this is my 13th year of being a head coach. So, like, I somewhat know what I'm doing. Doesn't mean I'm not learning and evolving. So I don't really, that stuff, not as much. He's got his basketball, I've got my basketball, but we're always obviously support each other as much as we can too.
Cool. Thank you.
Yep.
Next up is David Baroff.
Richard, good morning.
Good morning.
The matchup on Sunday is obviously exciting, but Donovan Dent playing tremendously to start the season. True Washington, CJ Noland. When you're looking at the matchups against Kadari Richmond, Davon Smith, Simeon Wilcher, and then, of course, the bigs, Nelly Jr. Joseph also playing very well against Zubi Ejiofor, Vinci Wichukwu. I mean, what is your take on the matchups and how you guys match up with St. John's?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say they're really big at every position. And that's something that I tried to, we had a good team last year, but we were small on the perimeter. And it worked. I mean, it's not that it didn't work, but I really set out to get bigger. Like, my dad's teams, I thought I probably took for granted why they were so good defensively and rebounding the ball. Certainly coaching has a lot to do with it because he holds his guys accountable, but just the size of his guys. I mean, Kadari Richmond could be a point guard. I guess Davion Smith is the only real small guy they have on their team. So I just know that if you turn the ball over, it could result in a pick six. If you don't block out, they're going to offensive rebound. If you don't handle pressure, they're going to make you pay. If you don't screen properly, they're going to blow it up. So just the physical, intense nature of which they play is, I think we saw it a little bit with UCLA, but they've got a little more returners than UCLA does. So we certainly are going to have to elevate that for sure.
Next up is Roger Rubin.
Morning, Richard. How are you?
Good morning. Doing good.
Richard, when your dad, when the St. John's job became a possibility for your dad, can you sort of describe what you saw in him as he contemplated that job? And maybe even before that happened, if he had a perspective on the St. John's position?
Yeah, I think he really liked Iona. I think he liked his life there. He'd go back roads from his house in Westchester to Iona, probably 10 minutes. I think he liked the small Catholic school feel. He just didn't love the one bid conference in the MAC, and that was never going to change. So I think when there was a couple of opportunities that who knows how real any of them were, but potential possibilities, he asked me, what do you think of St. John's? And I just thought, for you as a New Yorker, you've got an amazing network of family and friends there. I think it'd be a blast for you, and you'd have a lot of fun with it. I think for them, they've got a lot of work to do off the court. And I think Ed, their AD, is awesome, and he's going to get it going. But, it's all changed, obviously, with NIL. Like, I think they've got really good NIL, competitive NIL, but now Carnesecca needs a facelift. They need a practice facility, all those things. So he wants to shape St. John's basketball for a long time. And I think he's having a blast with it. So I'm happy he did it. I really am. I mean, there's nothing cooler than seeing him, watching him coach, and seeing my mom, my aunt, her best friend, my cousin, my brother, like that. That's what it should be all about right now for him.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, John Fanta.
Richard, look forward to seeing you on Sunday. Talking about your team, when you woke up the day of your season opener, what was something that you internally in your head were wondering about with your group that you think you've gotten a little bit of an answer on through 3 games?
Yeah, I would say the UCLA game showed me that we can compete with a lot of high-level teams, and I was very uncertain of that because we have a lot of new guys. We have 8 new guys. Now, every coach on the planet is saying that besides, I guess, Matt Painter. So we're all dealing with it, but just the competitive nature of going toe-to-toe with UCLA, an iconic brand in college basketball, showed me something. Because you never know. You try to simulate and practice the best that you can, but we showed a high level of toughness and intensity that game. But it's early. You're going to have to sustain that for the next 4 months, right? But that was a moment where we delivered, and that was very, very encouraging because I wasn't sure how we were going to handle that.
And then my second one is I've heard enough stories from Kevin Willard and Mick Cronin. Kevin would always say he wanted Mick to walk into your dad's office and start going over some pony stuff because it meant maybe he'd get out of work a little bit earlier. But what is something that perhaps your dad has done with his staff members that Richard Pitino does not do with his staff?
Oh my God, everything. And it's not that it's a way of life that you can't replicate. And it's just so different. And it's not that it is bad. I mean, it shaped all of us, and we all appreciate it. Mick, Kevin, Billy Donovan, so many guys. Like, it's a badge of honor working for my dad, but it is an experience. When I was at the Yankee game, we go to the Yankee game. I had way too many cocktails, and I'm trying to sleep in. I'm kind of on vacation, and all of a sudden I get a banging on my door. We're leaving, and it's like 6:30 in the morning. And I'm like, where are we going? Am I bringing all my stuff? And Steve Masiello's out there. I'm like, Steve, when did you become a driver? He goes, I don't know. Your dad made me pick him up. And then all of a sudden he's got individual instructions. So he just operates through chaos way better than I ever could. And, but it is fun. And I tell my staff all the time, you have no idea. So I don't do that because I need some sanity, but I'm very, very grateful that I was a part of it.
See you Sunday.
Yep. See ya.
All right. We have time for one last question. We're going to go to Van Tate.
Coach, what do you feel like you guys have to do to have success there?
You're just going to have to compete at a high level physically for 40 minutes. I mean, I think my dad's greatest strength as a coach is getting his teams to play with a relentless effort and attack. Whether it's a shot goes up, they're going to try to rebound it. You turn it over, they're going to go try to dunk it. You set a soft screen, they're going to blow it up. So just physically, you have got to compete because it's all three of their games really have been close, and all of a sudden they just blow it open. And he's always had teams that do that. So they're big, they're strong, they're athletic. We're gonna have to compete at a high level.
And to follow up on that, can I ask you, what experience do you hope your team get that they can use going forward?
Well, I think anytime, every game you learn something, especially with this new portal era. You're going to constantly have new faces, and you're going to constantly be teaching them new things. So we learned a lot from our exhibition scrimmage in the first 3 games, and now we're going on the road. I mean, that UCLA game was a neutral site game, but we had a lot of Lobo fans there. So there'll be 10, 11, 12,000, whatever it is, at Madison Square Garden cheering for the Johnnies. So we'll see how we act on a true road game starting at 10 a.m. There's some elements there that traveling across the country that are going to be challenging. But at 12 o'clock Eastern, nobody cares. So we got to go compete our butts off, but we'll be better for it in the end.
Thanks, Coach.
Yep.
All right. Thank you, Coach. You can head to practice.
Guys. Thanks.
All right. We next up have Matt Mahoney from Tell Us the Tower. And if you want to just start off a little opening statement about what this means to your organization to be a part of this game.
Sure. So thank you for being here this morning, guys. We're extremely grateful to the Pitino family, to St. John's University, to their athletic department, especially. They've done a great job with this, to our great friend, Frank Kehoe, who's on with us today, who helped set this up. For those of you who aren't familiar with us, the Tunnel Towers Foundation was born out of September 11th, 2001. It's named in honor of New York City firefighter Steven Siller. Steven was off duty that morning, a member of Squad 1 in Brooklyn, heard the call, turned his truck around, grabbed 60 pounds of gear from his firehouse, drove to the mouth of the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel, was denied access because of a civilian vehicle, and ran the 2-mile stretch through the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel to the South Tower, where he eventually lost his life with the rest of Squad 1, leaving behind 5 children under the age of 10 that morning. In Steven's honor, for the last 23 years, we've been the largest 501c3 charity supporting first responders, their families, and members of the military and their families. So what we do right now is we pay off the mortgages of homes for firefighters and police officers and members of our military who are killed in the line of duty. We build smart homes for our catastrophically injured veterans and first responders. And we are on the road to eradicating homelessness amongst our veterans. Just this year alone, we will permanently house with supportive services 6,500 veterans across the country. We'll pay off over 220 mortgages for our first responders and military members, or purchase them brand new homes, all mortgage free. And we'll build over 40 smart homes for our catastrophically injured veterans and first responders. The Pitino family knows the loss of September 11th. They lost a family member that day. 75 graduates of St. John's University perished at the World Trade Center, and scores more since from 9/11 illness. So it's something very near and dear to them. They've expressed that to us. It's so important to have a hometown team support what we do, based out of New York, but operate in all 50 states. And we do our utmost to make sure that the memory of those who sacrifice so much for their community and their country are never forgotten. So we're really thrilled to be here with all of you today. Really so grateful to St. John's University, their athletic department, and of course the Pitino family.
Do you think that you could give us a little bit of a background about how this thing came together and how intimately involved Coach Pitino was?
So one of the folks we have on the call with us today, Frank Kehoe, is a good friend of the foundation. He has been putting special, unique events for heroes together, with sporting events in honor of his dear friend, firefighter Jimmy Ritchie's from Brooklyn, who died on September 11th. Frank got to know Coach Pitino and the folks at St. John's. He's done some stuff with us before. We brought everybody together, and this was really important to Coach Pitino. He really spearheaded this. He made it all happen. He got St. John's right behind us, which was just fantastic, because once they embrace charitable event or any kind of community cause, they really go all in. And it's just been wonderful with his leadership at the top. And this is such a special game for the family. There's a lot going on. I could, all the questions you guys have about it, it's like a really newsworthy event. And it's a really great thing. And for him to take time out of this and say, how can we make this better and more fulfilling for them? Let's let's help our heroes. Let's help those who have lost their lives and help put their families back together. It was really great. So it couldn't have been done without Coach Pitino. Absolutely not.
All right. Well, if that's the last question for Matt, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks,
Looking
guys.
forward to having you on Sunday. Coach Pitino will be on in just a few minutes.
Hey,
So
Kevin, I think Zach has a question. Zach from the New York Post.
Oh, Zach, go ahead.
Thanks, guys. Just what for you guys? Just how important of an event and how important is the support, on a day like this?
It's huge. It's important, first of all, for our New York City institutions, especially like St. John's University, who again lost 75 alumni at the World Trade Center, to get involved, 23 years later, still remembering the sacrifice of those, alumni, of the family members and that's just alumni. When you think about all the family members of alumni, family members of current students and faculty and staff that perished at the World Trade Center, who have perished afterwards from 9/11 illness, it's a huge deal, and it's really one of these things. Again, this is a really great sporting event, and I love sports. This is a great sports event, and it's a great New York story. It's a great basketball story. It's a great college basketball story. And for these guys to just take a beat and say, hey, you know what? This is great. It's very fulfilling. It must be crazy as for a father and son to play each other, in a game like this. And it's just, I wouldn't want to be there at the Thanksgiving table afterwards. I don't know who gets the bragging rights, something like this. But at the end of the day, with all this, to take a moment out and really say, let's do something to help families that are really in need. Let's do something to help our homeless veterans. It's a very special moment for us because it's seeing folks who are incredibly busy and incredibly, focused on the game and focused on their job, but to take a minute and just, remember the sacrifice of those Americans. So we're really thrilled that they're doing it.
Yeah, obviously this is the first Madison Square Garden game of the year. It's a special game, pitting two teams that hopefully will go on to have highly successful years. And New Mexico, we have a great deal of respect for as they're coming off a win against a top 25 team with UCLA, where they led wire to wire. So we know we're obviously going to have to play much better than we've played of late to come away with a victory.
Zach, you can go ahead.
What's up, Rick?
Hey, Zach.
So I asked your son this. What is, I know it's obviously you guys have done it before, but what is it like, coaching against him, looking down the other sidelines, seeing him there, just kind of what is that like for you?
Well, I think before the game, you know he's there. During the game, you really don't know each other as on the sidelines at that point. You're so focused on stopping the opponent, stopping the players, that you don't really pay attention to coaches. So before the game, certainly. After the game, certainly. But during the game, there's very little notice of the other coaches.
And Rick,
I'm sorry. You broke up there, Zach. I didn't hear you. Frozen.
Can you hear me okay, Rich?
Now I can.
All right. When do you remember when Richard really started getting into coaching? Your other son Chris had said he never thought Richard would really follow you into coaching. Do you remember kind of when he started going into it, and how did that make you feel?
I tried to discourage all my kids from going into coaching. I said it's not really conducive for normal family life. And Richard then decided to take a high school coaching job while he was at Providence as a student, and then later on a GA's job with Timmy Welsh at Providence. So I knew back then he wanted to go into coaching, but I tried to discourage all of them, and most of them listened except Richard.
We'll go to John Fanta next.
Rick, good morning.
Where the hell's my dinner?
Well, it's coming. It's on the way. I don't move fast, Coach. It's on the way. Bigger than basketball. Sunday's game, Tunnel to Towers, and the 9/11 victims and their families, and what does that mean to you?
Well, I think Tunnel to Towers is an organization that just about every American admires with great respect. Certainly, I lost my best friend and brother-in-law in life, along with a number of other friends in 9/11. There doesn't go a day go by where most of the 9/11 families don't remember their loved ones. The rest of the country, time passes, but for us, it never passes. That day lives on for us until we die. And to just have the Tunnel to Towers behind it with all the fabulous work that they are doing for our veterans, for our responders, they're an amazing, absolutely amazing organization. They've become sort of like veterans hospital. I mean, they do more for people in need that support our country than any organization in America. So we're real excited to have them behind the game.
And then a quick follow-up from your vantage point, whether it be your different family group chats or your big and wide coaching player tree, can you break down the split in Sunday and how people pick their sides in this game, how your wife goes about this? What is that atmosphere like in the family right now?
Well, we'll have my daughter will be at the game. She'll sit behind my bench and she'll be neutral. My other son, Ryan, will sit behind my bench and he'll be neutral. My wife and her sister and her best friend will sit behind Richard's bench and will not be neutral. She told my son the other day that Richard, there's no doubt who I'm rooting for. It's you. You're my blood. He's not. So it shows you how much she loves me and how much she loves Richard.
Thank you.
We'll go to Jeff Grammer next.
Hey Rick, I got two for you. I wanted to start with Nelly and how much he's grown since you coached him and about the forgetting him on your tweet the other day and how much that's going to come back on Sunday.
Well, I actually didn't forget him on my tweet. It was there. My son, it was on the next one up because I had to go two different. And I don't tweet. My son tweets for me. I don't know how to do it, nor do I want to read the responses. So Nelly is probably one of the most fantastic young men I've coached. Just low maintenance as an athlete. Never complains, never looks for things. It's all about team with Nelly. He's improved from the time I've had him. He's a much better defensive player, much better offensive player. I'm real proud of Nelly. My son to this day still hasn't thanked me for sending him to him. But, children don't thank their dads enough in life.
Well, along those lines, 4 years now at New Mexico for your son. I'm curious how you've seen him grow from, his previous stop, 8 years at Minnesota and coaching everywhere else, how much he's grown and has he gotten more sarcastic with you like he has with us since he won the tournament last year?
Richard, he grew up probably more in Kentucky and New England than he did in New York. But he is about as New York sarcastic as any guy can be. His sense of humor is a really, really good. He's funny as hell. He has a good wit about him. Richard did a terrific job at Minnesota. He really did. You know, I always say that firing is part of the job with being a college coach. But if one guy deserved not to be fired, it was Richard, because he was doing a really good job at Minnesota. And he's doing a tremendous job at New Mexico. He loves it there. He thinks the Pit is one of the best places to play in all of college basketball. He thinks the fans are a miniature version of Kentucky in terms of their passion for basketball. So he's a very lucky young man. He's had some really good jobs, but he's done a great, he's left his mark at every place he's been. He's worked with me. He's worked with Billy Donovan. He's been a young head coach at FIU. And now he's settled in. He's got a beautiful home in New Mexico, really loves the place.
Thanks, Rick. I was going to ask you if you're trying to sway Jack at all, but I know better now. I know
Jack is impossible to sway. Jack was like Richard. Richard was just like that when he was a New York Knicks ball boy. He was very, very passionate, but Jack takes it to a new level. I'm gonna give the little son of a gun a smack right across the head when I see him.
Thank you. We'll go to Van Tate next.
Coach, got a couple of questions for you. First of all, could you talk about the matchup? How do you think you guys match up with New Mexico?
You know, I think it's a good matchup. I think their point guard is probably one of the premier point guards in the nation. I think he's a great basketball player. I've always felt that way. He was a great high school basketball player, champion in high school. And the other night, you know, having 10 assists, no turnovers. He dominated the game against UCLA. Nelly was terrific. Nelly's been playing outstanding. And I think they've got a great support cast. I like their power forward, the transfer from Dayton. He's terrific. I like True Washington. He's very good. I like the new guys they brought in. I like this team a lot because they have better length than they had last year, and last year's team was terrific. I think they play excellent defense. I think it's going to be a fabulous year for them. So we know this is a toss-up game. I've played against Richard's teams before, and sometimes we've had an advantage, sometimes he's had an advantage. This is a toss-up game. It's anybody's game. They're playing well, we're playing well. It's Madison Square Garden, the world's greatest arena. And it's great for the New Mexico fans as well as their players to experience Madison Square Garden.
And Coach, you've been at this for a long time. How do you manage the proud papa feelings at the same time you see the opponent on the other end?
You know, to be honest, people think this is a tough game. It's actually not a tough game. Richard will go out with his mom tonight. He'll go out with me and the family tomorrow night after we're done with our prep. You know, if we lose, my team will be disappointed, but I'll be very happy for my son. You know, I'm his biggest fan. Well, I should say his mom's probably his biggest fan, but I'm his second biggest fan. I root for him all the time. I've flown out to New Mexico and taken red eyes back just to see him. So I root for him all the time. I'm a gigantic fan of his. I hope St. John's wins, but if we don't, I'll be a proud father.
Let's go to Kevin Connolly next.
Hey, Rick, kind of to build on that point, you've talked a lot about New Mexico this season. When you've watched them, I guess kind of before this week, before you studied them on film, were you watching as a father or were you watching as a coach knowing that this was a team you had on your schedule upcoming?
I think a little bit of both. You know, I'm rooting very hard for him to win. Obviously, UCLA, I was on the edge of my seat the entire game. Mick Cronin was an assistant coach of mine, and you know, they led a ranked team wire to wire. The game was never in doubt, and I left that game knowing that we're going to have our hands full with this team. This team is the opposite of Wagner. Wagner took 20 seconds off the clock before they attacked us. This team will attack us in 4 seconds. They are a very, very fast-paced team offensively. they're a much better defensive team than they were last year because of their size. When you play small guard, sometimes you don't have the length to bother people. This year they have the length to bother people in the backcourt.
And Rick, you mentioned this is kind of like this is your first big non-conference game of the year. Just how much different do you think it is from last year when you guys played Michigan? How better ready are you to play this type of game now?
Well, two things. We are more ready defensively, but New Mexico is much better than Michigan. So it's a much bigger test. Even though we got killed by Michigan, New Mexico is a much better team than last year's Michigan team.
Thanks, Rick.
Let's go to Peter from the New York Daily News.
Hi, Rick. You mentioned advising your children against getting into coaching. I'm interested to know what did you kind of warn them about? And I guess now, how happy are you that Richard didn't follow that advice?
Well, it was a little bit different back then. Back then, I would go away for the entire summer. I would work the 5-star basketball camp for 5 weeks. I'd be away from my family. And then I was given lectures. We ran our own summer camps. So back then, because of recruiting, you were away for, I bet you when I first broke into coaching, the divorce rate was better than 70%. Because you lived on the road back then. But today's different. It's great for families because there's dead periods. The coaches don't go out as much. With the NIL, they go out very little now. So it's a much healthier situation for family activities. But back then, I didn't want my children to go into it because it was an abnormal family life. The children didn't see their dad as much, and there wasn't as much family time as there should have been.
Thank you.
Let's go to Roger Rubin next. Let's try to keep it to one per person.
Good morning, Rick.
Nice hat, Roger.
Thank you. 09 Final Four.
Yeah.
Rick, when you are scouting the Lobos, when you're watching them on television like you did with UCLA, we all have our influences, and he was an assistant coach for you. Are there things that you see the Lobos do and think to yourself, like, I taught him that, or that's a thing that that we were doing when we were at Louisville? Do you see things where your influence comes through in the way that his team plays?
No, not really. He has his own identity. We're very different as coaches. Where Richard has learned from me, he's learned an insatiable desire to work and be passionate about his job. He's learned about scouting from me. He's learned about meticulous preparation. But in terms of style of play, Richard's got his own style. I would say he's more like Billy Donovan offensively than he is me. Because I worked in the EuroLeague, we run different things offensively. Defensively, we have our similarities. But no, he's his own man. He's developed his own identity, his own brand of basketball, which he should have. UB Brown used to always tell me, take what you like from me and bring it with you and make it better. And then take what you don't like and don't run those things. And I think that's what Richard has done. He's taken from me what he likes and made it better for his system. And then he's taken what he doesn't like and built his own system.
We'll go to Dave Barov, and that will be our last question.
Coach, good morning. You talked about how well Nelly Jr. Joseph has played to start the year. I'm curious about the big man matchup. I know you've been trying to light a fire under Zuby Ejiofor to start the year. Ruben Preyes added some solid minutes, as had Vince. How do you guys plan on trying to contain a player like Nelly that you know very well on Sunday?
I really haven't tried to light a fire under Zuby. I'm really happy with Zuby. I think the media, like I woke up the other morning and my son, Richard, sent me a text from John Rothstein at 7:00 in the morning saying St. John's is not going to win if Nelly Joseph Jr. gets 2 rebounds in 2 games. And I texted John and said, John, why don't you try hugging your wife in the morning at 7 a.m. rather than texting about my player? And John needs to take that to heart and get a life. But I will say this, I'm perfectly happy with Zuby. You know what I told my team in referring to that was this. If Brady Dunlap had stopped in a game, it's because he just scored 20 points and the other coach is saying, hey, Brady Dunlap had 20 points. We got to stop that son of a gun. Well, it's the same thing with Zuby. If Zuby has 13, 14 rebounds against Rutgers, the next coach is going to say, hey, we got to do everything, keep this guy off the backboard. You know, if you've got a great rusher in football, they're going to put two blockers to stop him from getting to the quarterback if he got to the quarterback 4 times the last game. So scouting has a lot to do with taking away strengths. Certainly, we look at Nelly, we look at Dent, we look at the way they're shooting the ball, and we got to take away some of their strengths right now, or they're going to have a feast on us. So it's it's Zuby has his hands full with Nelly as well as Ruben or Vince, whoever checks him, because Nelly's an excellent basketball player. What Nelly's also become, and Richard's done a fabulous job, he's got lightning quick hands defending the pick and roll. He's got very quick feet. Richard's done a fabulous job of developing Nelly into one of the premier big men in the country. Guys, this is going to be a very exciting game because both teams want to get out there and with a high tempo. No better place than to have a great game than Madison Square Garden. So we're very excited to have the Lobos in. Welcome their fans into town, certainly. And it should be exciting for our fans as well as theirs.
Thank you very much, Coach Pitino, and thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you on Sunday.
All right. Thank you. Take care.